Sorry, just a little late. Anyone 22 years and younger, can you tell me what this is? An overhead projector. Yes, an overhead projector. How many of you still went to school when they were using overhead projectors? So I remember going to school, they would have these rolls on them of the transparencies, and the teachers would do notes. And then at the end of the class, whoever was the worst kid in the class got picked to clean the overheads. How many of you had to clean? Yeah, there's a few of you, yeah. Exactly. Well, I remember when we started as a church 21 years ago, we had an overhead projector. This is what we used for yeah, it's not working now. Come on. There we go. We had an overhead projector for singing all our music on, for doing anything we wanted up on the screen. That's what we did 21 years ago. And I even remember sitting in the elders meeting where we were debating. I'm seeing stars because I just looked into that light. That's not good. Debating whether we should spend the money or put it in next year's budget for that newfangled projector thing. And it was actually quite an intense debate, and then finally it was decided. And the irony is today, in this room alone, I think we have 4 projectors. So times have changed, haven't they? Does anyone know how long or when the first iPhone was introduced? Anyone? The first iPhone was introduced June 29th, 2007. 10 years. 10 years we've had smartphones. That's it. That's crazy when you think about it. In 2010, how many apps do you think were available for the iPhone? 2010, that's 7 years ago. Anyone want to guess? 250,000 apps. That's how many apps were available in 2010, 3 years after the phone was introduced. Now you jump forward, and you notice my lovely use of technology? Sheet of paper, people, sheet of paper. That's all it is a sheet of paper. Okay? 2010 is 2.2 million apps for the iPhone. And for those of you who are keeping score, the Android has 2.8 million apps. Just saying. It is a lot of apps. Let me ask you, if you've been to SouthRidge for any length of time, you know that one of the things we try and do here at the church is to just create a safe place on Sunday mornings, a non-judgmental place for you to come in and, just be authentic. So let me just ask you this question. How many of you checked your phone or your tablet between the start of the service and now? How many? How many are you going to be honest? And I'm putting my hand up, by the way. There's a few of you. Yeah, I mean, for me, I really needed to check my Clash of Clans village to see if I'd been raided. And unfortunately, I was. So I lost a bunch of loot. Let me ask you another question. How many of you use your phone or your tablet for the Bible on Sunday mornings? Hands up. A few of you. How many of you take notes on your phone or tablet on Sunday morning? There's a couple of you. How many of you just lied so that people will think you're taking notes while you're looking at your phone while I'm talking? Huh? We're not judging at all. It was funny, a couple weeks ago, I saw posted on Facebook a quote from one of the messages, and it had been done during the service, and the person's son challenged them about using their phone and going on social media while the message was going on. It was pretty hilarious. This morning we're talking about technology, and to be honest, I'm not really sure technology is really that taboo a subject. But when was the last time you heard a message in church on just technology? Because it's not really you find, in the Bible, Paul doesn't write about the evil uses of Facebook or, the best way to profile your church on the internet in his Gospels. And yet that's a reality for us here today. And today I'm going to look at 4 benefits that technology gives us and kind of 4 areas where I think there's some concern for us that we just need to spend some time thinking through and talking through. So I'll go through the benefits first. There's probably more than this, but I just kind of picked 4. 4 benefits of technology. 1, and really this is talking more about technology in the last 10 years, the internet, social media, that kind of stuff. Communication. Obviously, our ability to talk and text and email all around this world is amazing. It's unbelievable, amazing. Next Sunday, Pam and I are actually Skyping with a family from Colombia who know our missionaries, Claudia and Diego Cardona. And they're hoping to send their daughter to live in Langley for a semester and go to school here. And they're looking at sending her to live with us. So we're going to talk to them about that. I mean, you just when I was in high school, that wasn't even a thought to have a visual conversation over the internet with someone thousands and thousands of kilometers away. Crazy, eh? Well, the second thing I think that technology does for us is that it actually expands the reach of the church, and our church too, for that matter. This past weekend, I was at our regional convention, and a guy came up to me and introduced himself to me. I had no idea who he was, and he just said, "Hey, Brent." So he introduced himself, and then he says, "I've listened to some of your messages." I went, "What?" I have a friend who goes to SouthRidge, and he sent me the link to some of your messages saying I should listen to them. So I've listened to them. And I just, wow. My dad was a pastor for a long time. None of his messages are online. None of them. Very different day and age we live in. The reach of the church is amazing. And here's the thing, the church has really taken advantage of technology if you look through history. Some historians actually point out to one technological advance that helped the early church explode across the Roman Empire. And that technology was the Roman road system. The Romans had built this amazing road system. And many historians look at how the church spread, and they look and think that if Paul did not have that Roman road system, he would not have been able to travel as much as he did, because it would have just taken a longer time to get to where he wanted to go. And so many historians credit the Roman road system in part to some of the explosive growth of the early church. Fast forward a few hundred years, you only look 500 years ago at the Reformation. One of the key pieces of technology that allowed the Reformation to explode was the printing press. It had just been invented. And so it enabled Martin Luther to broadcast his ideas and his 95 theses that he posted on the Wittenberg door and get it out into the rest of Europe. I mean, we all have Bibles that we hold in our hands. Without the printing press, none of us probably, or very few of us, would have Bibles in our hands. And even a little more recent is the whole invention of the radio. The radio opened a door for the church to be able to broadcast the message of Jesus Christ into areas where people physically couldn't go or had a very hard time going. When we were in Bolivia, Pam and I, with one of the first teams we sent from our church, I think it was 2003, we were down there, and one of the projects we went and visited was the radio station. And the missionaries there broadcasting the gospel message to the Indians of Bolivia in the far reaches, in the mountains. And the Indians had radios, and they could listen to the gospel because of that. Just amazing. And now the internet. I mean, there's hardly any place on earth where you can't get access to the internet. And so even closed off countries to the gospel, you can penetrate with the internet. And people come to Christ and come to faith all the time because of what they find on the internet. Which leads to, I think, my third point in terms of the benefit of technology. We live in an age, unlike any other, where there is more biblical knowledge available to you than at any time in world history. You have more access to biblical knowledge than even some of the greatest scholars 200-300 years ago had access to. Think about that. Amazing. The fourth thing I think technology does is technology does help us with community. Technology helps us stay connected no matter where we're at. Think about this. My parents were missionaries in Colombia, and so as a kid I was in Colombia in the 70s. And I remember my mom writing a letter to my grandmother every week. She would write one letter, put it in the mail system, and send it away. My grandma on the other end would write one letter every week as well. Here's the thing. Sometimes it took 2, 3, even 4 weeks for that letter to arrive. Imagine that. You write a letter, you maybe ask a question, and it takes 3-4 weeks to get to the person, and then it takes another 3 or 4 weeks to get back. It's like a month and a half later, you're getting an answer. Crazy. I mean, how long does it take us to get an answer from England, South America, Europe? It's like instantaneous almost, right? Just the times have changed. But that ability to stay in touch with each other has helped, create that community with us. And as a church, we've been looking at this aspect of how do we use technology to help our church connect. How many of you noticed that we didn't produce a picture photo directory this past year? A couple of you? Normally in the past, we've done a directory where people's pictures are in there, their address, their phone number. So you have a way to see who matches up with what name and where they live and that. So when you want to call them, you can. We didn't do that because we're going to be introducing over the next couple months something called SouthRidge Connect. And it's going to be an online directory, and that's part of just one small function what we're trying to do with this. There's other aspects of like child check-in is going to change, and online giving is going to become available through our website and through an app even, and that kind of stuff. So we're looking at how do we use technology as a church to help us create and foster community even in the digital sense. That's what we're trying to do. But at the same time, even though technology can be used for so many good things, there is a tension with technology because we know that there are some issues when it comes to technology. Let me share with you a verse this morning. It's going to be a verse that will kind of just guide our discussion as we go through this. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. And in the context that Paul is writing this to the church of Corinth, and let me just give this plug for the book of 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. If you have messed up stuff going on in your life or people who are messed up that are trying to figure out answers about how would a Christian respond, just read 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. That was one messed up church. Lots of good stuff in there. If you can't find an answer in there, you're probably not going to find it in the rest of the Bible. But in this case, Paul is talking about the freedoms. He's reinforcing the freedoms that we have when we come to Jesus and turn our life over to Jesus and say, okay, Jesus, you've saved us. Now you're our Lord and Master, and we're living our life for you. And Paul's saying, when you do that, you experience this amazing freedom because you're free from the effects of sin eternally. You're free from being bondaged in sin. And yet the Corinthian church, many of them were looking at that freedom and turning it into license and believing that they could just do whatever they wanted. And this whole context of chapter 6 is in the whole area of sexual purity. But I think this verse, we can take out of that context and apply to technology as well, not just our sex lives. And so, Paul says, everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Sound familiar from last week? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so I think there's 4 things this morning that I want to look at that are things that we need to be really careful with technology. And I'm just going to turn this off because the reality is we have better technology than this, so let's use it. The first thing I want to just look at is the whole area of technology and addiction. And 2 years ago when we did our first Taboo Series, I did a whole message on pornography. And I'm not going to redo that message, but I just thought I would highlight a couple things. This comes out of a recent poll done by the Barna Group, and these stats are about pornography. 4.6 billion hours last year. That translates into 524,000 years of viewing pornography on one pornography site. These are the stats from just one site. That should pause and cause us to think about that for a little bit. The same survey found that 61% of all pornography are viewed on mobile devices. So if, as parents, you have set up your home for your computer to be in the living room or the dining room where you can see where your kids are accessing, thinking that that's what you've done to create a safe space, that's great. But if they have a mobile device like an iPod or a phone and they're going into their bedroom, how are you protecting them? Only 1 in 20 young adults consider porn bad. This isn't a survey of the church, this is just a survey of the culture. I don't know what the ratio would be in the church. 80% of those who admitted to viewing porn in the previous month felt no sense of guilt in viewing it. I used this illustration 2 years ago, but it fits, parents especially. If you are not protecting your kids around the issue of pornography and technology, you might as well hand them a bunch of $5 bills, drive them downtown Vancouver, drop them off in front of the number 5 Orange, and tell them to go in. Now, most parents would say, well, are you out of your mind, Brent? I wouldn't take my kids down into Vancouver to a strip club and then just let them go in. But if you are doing nothing to protect their internet usage at home, you have done the exact same thing and even worse. A lot of times as parents, we're not sure how to do that. We're not maybe tech savvy, tech smart. And so one of the things at SouthRidge we do is every year we offer a course, an internet safety course. How do you help protect your home, your kids especially, about accessing stuff? And it's not foolproof, but what are some of the steps you can take? And we're offering it again May 15th. So if that's something that you need to look at, write that down, put it in, take out your phone, put it in your day timer, your calendar, go ahead, I'm giving you permission. You just do that. May 15th, Monday evening. One of the other stats I just want you to know is that, and this, as grandparents, this is really important for you. If you have wireless access in your home and you have your grandkids coming over and accessing it, one of the studies has found that 75% of kids' first time access to pornography is actually in their grandparents' home, not their parents' home. So grandparents, this is for you. Just because you don't have your grandkids living with you, but if you give them access to the internet, you need to help protect your grandkids. So come to the Internet Safety Course, May 15 and next. Let me ask you, does anyone know the definition of nomophobia? Anyone know what nomophobia means? It is the fear of something. Yep, the fear of something. It's actually, when it's a phobia, it's the irrational fear of something. Psychology Today says that nomophobia defines it as the fear of being without a mobile device or beyond cell phone coverage. How many of you are nomophobic? Huh? Oh man, you guys are a bunch of liars. Thank you for those of you who are honest and put your hands up. Because here's what the studies say. 66% of adults feel extremely anxious if they lose connections with their phones or their tablets. 66%. You know that feeling when you're looking at your phone and that little warning, 10% battery, comes up? You know that little drop in your stomach and you're not anywhere near an electrical outlet and you don't have your charger with you? You know that fear? You might be nomophobic. You know that fear when you walk into some place and oh shoot, where is it? Right? That little heart pump? You might be nomophobic. I'm just telling you. 58% of people say they won't go one waking hour without checking their phone. 87% of teenagers sleep with their phones. 89% of people admit to checking email every single day while on vacation. 84% of people said they could not go one day without their phones. Is checking your phone the last thing you do at night and the first thing you do in the morning? You might be nomophobic. When I read 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, I only read half the verse. Let me read the whole verse now, that we have some context about technology. Everything is permissible for me, but not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. This verse can apply to all areas of our life. Not just technology, but we're focusing on technology this morning. And so ultimately, my question to you this morning is, are you mastered by the technology in your life? Because if you are, Paul says that's wrong. And you've got a problem. I've got a problem. We, as believers, shouldn't be mastered by anything except Jesus Christ. He's our one and only master. And yet so often I think with technology is that it creeps up on us. And we don't even realize that it is mastering us. We are blinded and blindly following just technology and our culture and doing what everyone else in our culture does. In 2012, Andrew Keene wrote a book called Digital Vertigo. And in that book, he talks about two observations that he saw in culture. And this is 5 years ago. 5 years ago, he was calling out this warning that he saw developing in culture. This one warning was on the narcissism that was developing in people because of technology, and in particular social media. The other warning he gave had to do with voyeurism. And when he was talking about voyeurism, what he means is this whole surveillance culture we have, with all the video cameras and the online access to things everywhere. And he was raising the flag about these two things as things that we should be worried about and that we need to have some dialogue in and not just jump into it with both feet because we're not even aware of the results and the consequences of it. And so the first thing I looked at is addiction. The second thing that I think we have to worry about when we come to technology is this whole issue of narcissism. I love this quote by Trevin Wax. The primary myth the smartphone tells you every day is that you are the center of the universe. That's what your phone tells you every single day. You are the center of the universe. Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever you're on, You are the center of the universe. And what happens is when we start thinking we are the center of the universe, one of the issues we face is that we matter more than everyone else. My opinion counts more than your opinion. And I have the right to speak into everything. It also comes up in this ugly envy thing called comparison. Right? We forget what Facebook is. Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media platform you're on. I'm just going to use Facebook. So if I say Facebook, you just plug in your mind whatever your favorite one is, okay? Because I don't want to keep calling all of them out or partial them out. Facebook is designed to be the highlight reel of your life. That's what it's designed for. Right? We don't post on Facebook things unless they're highlights. I mean, I know people who will look at 12 pictures from the same place. Oh, my hair, that one hair is out of place. No, not that one. Right? My leg isn't bent properly for the perfect picture. I didn't suck my gut in. I didn't stick my butt out. Whatever. Right? We go through multiple pictures just to get the right one, to post it on Facebook, to let everyone know that we're living the life. You know what's done even greater damage to this and created even a more narcissistic culture is the selfie. Do you remember the days before selfies? When you had to get a picture of yourself somewhere, like you were out somewhere on a date or you wanted a picture just letting people know that you were in a cool place, what did you do? You had to ask somebody, here, even if you had a phone, can you take a picture of my phone? So you had to communicate with someone and ask them and a stranger and invite them into your moment and take a picture. Or you did the other thing that I sometimes did. You just flipped your phone, right? And you can't see anything. So you're just like taking 20 or 30, boom, boom, hoping that one of them has a face in the frame. But the selfie, you just take it wherever you want. You make sure you got the angle right. You can do things. Boom, boom. You can take as many as you want. Narcissism. I am the center of the universe. In my research for this message, I sat down with a couple of vice principals in the Langley School District and just asked them about technology and what they were seeing in the school system. And one of them told me one of the issues they're finding, especially with young girls, like, teens, tweens age group, is that more and more of these young girls are finding their self-worth from their online profile. And when I say that, I mean they post something, and if they don't get 50 likes or 100 likes, they think everyone hates them. I mean, how many of you had a good day yesterday? Yeah, 100 likes on your Facebook page because you went out as a family and posted it and everyone's, oh, that's cute, boom, boom. How many of you had a terrible day? You only got 5 likes on whatever you were doing yesterday. The idea that we can have or find our self-worth on our online presence feeds into this narcissistic complex that our culture is trying to create through technology. What happens is when we focus more on ourselves, we are less satisfied. The more we focus on us and what we're doing, the less satisfaction we will feel with our lives. Because we were not created to just be focused on us. We were created for relationship. We were created to follow Jesus. We were actually created to follow the mission that God has given us. And when all we think is we are important, the most important, it just feeds into that unsettledness that we have in our souls. And we get anxious and overwhelmed. It was interesting, one of the VPs I was talking to was talking about the kids and their struggle, and then he said something. He goes, Brent, you know what? The parents are just as bad. The issues of technology that we got to deal with, and he was telling me a vice principal's day a good chunk of it is dealing with technology issues with the students, and whether it's bullying, whether it's sending inappropriate pictures, whatever it is, their inability to focus in the classroom, all that stuff. He goes, but the parents, they're just as bad or even worse. Parents are becoming so addicted to their technology, so addicted to their phones. And one of the things he's seen is that because of the internet and the information out there, parents think they're the experts. And parents will come in and talk about things, wearing the badge that they are the expert on every subject matter because they found it on the internet. And we're getting to this place because we're becoming so narcissistic. We are the center. We know all. That if we can find it on the internet, we can go in and debate someone who has spent years studying something and years of experience with an issue and tell them they're wrong and feel justified doing it. The other aspect of narcissism is that when we are putting ourselves online and interacting with our online community, we actually end up selecting the online audience that we will listen to. I mean, how many of us will post something and someone will respond negatively to it? What is our usually first thought? Unfriend, unfriend, unfriend. When we do that, what we end up doing is just pooling in our audience people who are like-minded, who will only give us the thumbs up with things. And what we're finding, and I'm finding this, is people are less and less likely and less willing to listen to someone who has a different opinion than themselves. We are becoming an intolerant culture. We are not willing to allow someone else's voice to be heard, especially on my feed, especially in my comment section, because it's all about me. I was reminded of this week even. I was sitting in a meeting with a bunch of parents about our school, and there was some heated stuff going on. And some things that people were suggesting, courses of action, that were very aggressive and very, very angry, until there's two of us that kind of stood up in the meeting and said, look, guys, this is not how you solve a problem. This is not the first step, to go down and protest and beat on. That is not how you handle things. That's not how I teach my kids to handle things. That's not how I would counsel anyone in our church to handle things. We have lost, or we are losing the space, especially digitally, to be able to actually have conversations where we have differing opinions and disagreements. And part of it, I think, is because we're becoming so narcissistic that only we matter. The third thing that I've kind of noticed with technology that's creating some issues for us is the issue of anxiety. One of the VPs I was talking to said one of the huge things he's noticed difference is that the level of anxiety in kids is just through the roof these days. He said, if you talk to a teacher who's been teaching for 15 years or more and ask them about this, usually this is what they'll say. 15 years ago, they would have a class and they'd have one kid who could kind of deal with that. That would be hard to manage. Nowadays, it's common to have anywhere from 5 to 8 kids in a class that they just have no ability to manage. And part of it is the technology side. Some of it is not eating properly. Some of it is parents not really having contact with their kids and paying attention to them. But a big piece of it is the technology. Some of it, and part of that is screen time, just the immense amount of screen time kids are having, and that therefore not having enough exercise. But the other aspect is they're, just like us, are addicted to their social media or their technology. Because every time that little ding goes off, there's a little chemical that gets released in our brain that forces us to want to go and check it because something good might be happening. It's kind of when if you were a gambler and you go into the casino and you put the money in, you pull the lever or you push the button and you're going, okay, yeah, next time I'm going to get hit the jackpot. The next time I'm going to hit the jackpot. You get that ding and you go, oh, it might be that email response from someone or the text. Oh, mom might have finally answered my question, or that boy might have texted me back. You're hoping for the jackpots and you keep going back and back and back and back. And pretty soon you just find yourself on it constantly. And in many ways, you're no different than the gambler who gets so lost in track of time, slipping money into the machine, just waiting for the jackpot that they don't even realize they've wet themselves. True stories, by the way. We just get addicted and we get there and this whole anxiety. I think we are anxious and overwhelmed as a culture. And we can't quiet the internal noise that is going on inside of us. That internal noise that is caused by this addiction to technology, this addiction to seeking approval from outside sources, from likes. We're anxious and we're overwhelmed, and we can't deal with it. There is an unsettledness in our soul. We lie to ourselves when we sit down on the couch and we grab our phone or our tablet and have the TV on and going, I'm just going to relax for a few minutes. And what do? We check Facebook, or we play our games, or we check our emails, or whatever it is, telling ourselves that we are relaxing, but our brain is telling us we're not relaxing because it keeps sending out signals. Boom, check this, check that, check that. And then an hour later, we have no idea where the time went. And we didn't really do anything profitable. There's a situation where Jesus is talking to a crowd of people. And I think this verse applies to us in this context, where you have an internal issue going on, some internal noise. And in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 29, Jesus says this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." I think we read the first part of that verse 28, and we read it and go, oh, great, come and find rest. And when we say rest, we just think physical rest. I mean, most of us acknowledge that it is good to go on vacation, right? It is good to get away from the day-to-day stuff of our work, spend time with our family or families or our husband and wife, and go on vacation and just relax, give our body a break, rest. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He goes on and says that not only do you need your rest for your bodies, you actually need rest for your souls. And that's a whole thing of the Sabbath in the Old Testament and the New Testament, this idea of finding rest for your souls and making it a priority in your life to take time to separate and stop working and focus on God and rest in His presence. And I think this is one of the things that technology is battling against with us, is actually the ability of us to rest with our souls. Tristan Harris in a TED Talk talks about this. He's talking about people texting each other, and he says, we are bulldozing each other's attention. And he gives this example of this study where Gloria Mark and Microsoft teamed up to do a study. And they found, like, if you're at work, so this is a work study, you're at work working on a project and someone texts you or emails you and it pops up. You stop what you're doing and you go and answer them or look at what they're doing. What they found for the average person, it takes an average of 23 minutes to re-engage with what you were originally doing. 23 minutes. Because what happens is you answer that text or you look at that text, and then what they found, you usually do two other things before you actually get back to the project you were on. Technology is not helping us with productivity sometimes when it comes to this issue of attention and the ability to focus. In fact, the study found that we self-interrupt ourselves on average 3.5 minutes, every 3.5 minutes. And the thoughts that run through our head is, oh, I better check my text. Oh, I better check my email. What if I miss? What if I miss? Blah, 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 blah. What's going on? How's my game progressing? We actually self-pull ourselves out to check on stuff. But we need rest for our souls, and the only way we get rest for our souls is when we can block out all the distractions. In France, there's, I believe, a new law been brought in, and it's in effect now, I believe. In France, employers can't require an employee to check their email after work hours now. You're not allowed to require that of your employees if we were in France. And what they're trying to attempt to do is try and create space in our lives where we disengage from the technology. Because when technology first came in, we just thought, hey man, we can do things wherever we want at all times. And we thought this was awesome. We can get more work done, but we don't count the cost of what it actually costs us when we take that mindset. You see, our souls become restless when we are not connected to God. That's the whole point of Sabbath, is reestablishing the connection with God that we need on a weekly, daily basis. And I fear for most of us, technology is something that gets in the way of that, finding that rest in God. And it stops us from doing that. Let me ask you, are you feeling overwhelmed right now? Do you feel short with your kids? Are you feeling spiritually exhausted? If you are, maybe you should look at the role of technology in your life. Is it mastering you? Is it stopping you from finding that rest with God? For some of you, maybe you need to unplug. A Sabbath is really stopping and unplugging from life, normal life of work and everything for a day. That's the biblical model. Do you take a Sabbath from technology? Do you take a day away from your emails and social media and phone? Maybe you need to just start with an afternoon. If you can't figure out you could do it for a day. Do you need to unplug? A couple weeks ago, I was wrestling with this, and I ended up turning off the notifications from my email. Work email, Gmail, all that stuff on my phone. Turned it off. I couldn't believe the freedom that I had. It's not that I don't check it a couple of times a day and I look and go in it, and if I'm expecting an email, I'll probably check it a little more often. But I don't have that buzz or that ding occurring every, few times an hour. And I go, oh, I wonder who that is. Got to check. It was amazing how much calmer I felt. Maybe for some of you got to take the notifications off. It's not like you're never going to check it, right? Unplug. One of the great tips I learned while I was doing this research was this. A guy who studies technology suggested this tip. If you feel that social media is ruling over you, it has a mastery over you, he suggested this. Take your social media app off your home screen. Take it off. Like any of the home screens. And just have it where you have to go into all your apps to find it. And the reason he said that is when you do that, you have to make a conscious choice to look at that social media. It takes a couple of steps to get there. And in those couple of steps, you can ask yourselves, do I really need to do this? Because most of us, it's on our home screen. We're standing in line at the grocery store. What do? Click, touch, we're there. We're at the stoplight. Click, touch. Oh, no, we don't do that, right? But if you feel that technology has mastery over you, then put in place some things, some steps that stop you from instantly accessing it. Take a couple steps away. You see, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, they design their sites. This is what they design their sites for, to keep you on as long as they can. Their employees get bonuses if they can figure out ways to keep you on their sites. They are trying to draw you in and keep you there and trap you there. That's what they're trying to do. So be smart. Take some steps to fight that. I hate to admit this, but a couple weeks ago, Pam and I had some serious conversations about technology use in our house. And if I really want to be honest, it was more one-sided. It was Pam having a conversation with me about technology in our house. And she was concerned about how much time all of us were spending on technology. It wasn't just me. And she goes, we need to really revisit this with our kids. So last week we had a family meeting with our kids, talking about we're concerned as mom's concerned. No, mom and dad are concerned about the use of technology in our home. And so we just talked about some of the things we had noticed, right? We're all sitting in the living room or in the evening watching a TV show, but every single one of us has a phone or a tablet or an iPod out looking at stuff at the same time. And what we noticed is we're doing less and less things as a family together without technology. And so we said, look, guys, we need to figure this out. We need to change this. So we gave them some time to think about. We're having a follow-up meeting, and we were supposed to have it this week, but I think Pam and I have been out every night this week, so it just didn't work. But we're having a follow-up meeting about it. And now I have like a couple hundred people to keep me accountable. So maybe I shouldn't have shared that. But how does your family address social media? How does your family address technology? How does your family address screen time? You need to think that through. I think the final one, the last one, is relationships. I'll be brief on this one. You can't fully be present in a virtual relationship. Many of us think we can have the same type of relationship virtually or digitally that we can in real life. Psychologist Sherry Turkle did a TED Talk called Connected But Alone a number of years ago now and has over 3.8 million viewers. And in it, she was talking about how we have lost the ability, or the younger generation specifically is losing the ability to have conversations. And she talked about how we are trying to manage our relationships via online. And she calls it the Goldilocks effect. Not too close, not too far, just right. Right where I can control what you see about me and who can see what I'm putting out there. But she points on and says, look, connection without real conversation creates isolationism. And that isolationism leads to loneliness. Because you can't have real conversations digitally. You can tell someone you love them and encourage them and tell them you're praying for them and pick up the bread, honey, and we'll meet over at that restaurant. But you can't get to the deep things in life through texting. And what people are finding is that no one is listening to them if all they do is have digital online relationships. And people, especially the younger generation, are becoming lonely, but they're afraid of intimacy. Because as Sherry says, relationships are rich, messy, and demanding. And yet we try and clean them up through technology. The challenge with our relationships is don't leave it to the digital world. Engage, be present, have eye contact. They're finding that teens and young adults don't know how to talk to people and have eye contact with people, adults. Treat others like you'd like to be treated. One of the VPs I talked to told me a whole curriculum that they've set up for the school about digital citizenship and all the things you need to do as a citizen in the digital world. But you also need to know how to live real life. Real life. I mean, how many times have you been at a restaurant with someone and they've picked up their phone to answer a text or checked why it was buzzing mid-conversation? How many times have you done that to someone? That is not engaging in the real relationship that is before your eyes right then. I heard of people going to restaurants and the rule is everyone puts their cell phone in the middle, and if someone reaches for it to check for it before the end of the dinner and it's over, they pay the whole bill. Other times, and we've tried this at our home, not recently but in the past, especially when we had a bunch of family come over, is we have a basket. As people enter the door, phones go in the basket sits on the counter. What will you do to enhance the relationships in your family and in your home, the ones that you actually are living in? You see, technology is designed to work for you. The question is, are you a slave to it? Let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Lord, this is a message that I'm sure impacts every single one of us in this room. And Lord, this one impacts me a lot. As I've been examining my attitudes and my uses of technology, especially my phone and my tablet. And Lord, I just pray that this has been a reminder for us that we are not called to be slaves to technology. We are not called to be slaves to the digital world. We are called to be slaves to you alone. And so, God, I pray that this message is helpful for people to re-examine that they don't just blindly slide into operating a way of life without thinking what they're doing. Lord, help our parents to teach their kids how to use technology well and wise. Help keep them from falling into addictions or anxiety. Help them strengthen their homes. Lord, help us to know how to use technology in a way that would glorify you and honor you and spread your kingdom and use it as the tool it's been created to be, not the master sometimes we let it be. In Jesus' name, amen.